So let's just say we sat here for about a minute, right? And now we want to start to free up these finger flexors. So I want you to start to slowly move. You see how you're a little elevated here? Yes. Good. Now we have the movement from the wrist. So now keep a fist. Now I want to be up and down. So now I want to be up with flare and down. Up with flare. Not every finger has its own muscle. I am more influenced towards the common extensor tendon. Muscles like brachioradialis or other, we're gonna have him do more like pronation, supination to address. Okay? Yeah. Flip it over. These are actually the tighter ones, but they're much like the pec in that they never complain. They're happy to be tight. You're gonna feel the extensor pain due to overstretch more than you're gonna feel this flexor pain due to overcontraction. So now I'm moving down into supinator a little bit, and this is where I'll start to address those tissues. So I'm gonna have you just flop your thumb down, go the other way, so rotate. Oh yeah, good, and back. Okay, now flat. So now here, we're gonna take the same concepts. Fingers open, drop them down. Good, pick them up, fingers open. Good. Yes. Now fist. Yep, up and down. Now down with flare. Okay, normally where do you carry your tension in your elbow? Right at the extensor tendon? Right here. Okay, so that's super common. It's like pretty much where most people are gonna feel that elbow pain. Sometimes it can create numbness actually down into the hand. You get that sometimes too? Yeah, so it can actually be pretty nasty. And in his case, that's how he makes his money, right? So there's no time for numbness when it comes to that stuff. So static tempering, adding dynamic distal to the tissue, right? But now we have the option. You doing okay? You want to switch arms?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So now we have the option of becoming a little bit more dynamic. Rolling right down, much like you would consider in the leg. There's a lot of different muscle insertions as you get down. This is a nasty spot. This would be a similar comparison to that spot where we talked about the gastroc-soleus complex. This is a complex where the wrist flexors and the finger flexors are very kind of thick together in this spot. So a lot of bang for your buck here, especially with the static side of things. On the other side, what she was kind of asking about is what I'm trying to influence, what part of the tissue. So there's a group of muscles, like when we do our hammer curl, that cross the elbow into the forearm. Those are very nice muscles because they don't overtax the shoulder when we're doing curls. However, they do start to bind up these wrist flexors a little bit. So I will come also from the inside. Okay? So when you come from the inside, you cannot dynamically roll. There's too much bone in there. But we can find that spot. You okay? Now I want you to swipe your arm left and right. Yes. Just the wrist, sorry. So now we have deviators that pull the thumb towards your body or push the pinky away. Those guys need some love too. You okay?
Yeah, they're getting lots of love right now.
Yeah. So I guess the concept is if you're gonna dynamically temper a small area like this, it's better to set the tool where you want it and dynamically move the extremity. It's a little safer because one of the key elements with safety is I need whatever I'm treating to be pretty much in full contact with what's going on. I would never be trying to temper him here or working on his quad with nothing underneath it. I mean, it's common sense, right? But I think it's worth stating that you need to have support under the extremity. So in this case, I cannot put the roll there. That has no benefit other than it just hurts. And as much as I've been creating pain all day today, it's not the goal. You know what I mean? So that's just too rigid, too much bone there. But I can bring it here, and then he can free those structures that are sliding through that area by creating motion distal or further away from where the treatment is taking place. Okay? So I'm going to show you guys what we call rolling pin. So you're going to turn to face me, please, and let's switch arms here. Definitely a kind of a specialty treatment here, but I want to show you guys either way. So he's going to put his arm right on top of that thing. So the support now is through the tool and the table. I'm going to create like that old school roller thing that you would dry your clothes with, and he's going to pull his arm right out of the socket there. Good, push it forward. So now we're dynamically working flexors, extensors. Now flare those fingers. Yes. So again, he has to work with his fingers pinched together all day long. I need him to spread those suckers out to create some tissue response. Good, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now go ahead and lay flat on your back. Yes, please, on the crouch back. Bicep tendon pain, super common. Not always just from bad elbows. Some of this other stuff we're talking about, bad shoulders or other. But the best way to keep a bicep healthy is to not let it get bad in the first place. So we're going to take the arm a little bit out to the side. And in this case, I'm going to statically set that roll right onto essentially like the bicep tendon, the anterior aspect of the shoulder, just statically opening that thing up and through there. The barbell works pretty good for this. You can get the kettlebell in there, but the barbell is probably your best solution. This works good just to let it sit there statically. But now he can also really pronate and supinate because the bicep has a little bit of that influence on the position of the elbow. The bicep can handle, for sure, dynamic tempering. There's not a lot of bony exposure in there. The bicep does a great job of protecting the humerus. And this is, again, some of those big benchers, big heavy guys. I mean, they're using like what you saw me use with that 135 pounder just right on my pec, statically sitting there. This is some variation of, about 45 pounds. You doing okay with this? Mm-hmm. Tolerable, right?
Yeah.
Now I rolled it just a little bit out onto his humerus, and you can tell more sensitive there, for sure. But not.
Yeah, no, it's definitely more sensitive.
Okay, let's even you out, so I don't send you home with one bad one here. Okay. So again, if you're looking at me, assuming that I'm him laying down, so I'm here, I have to palm up to open the bicep. I have to take it away a little bit because pec comes in and it like really folds, like really wraps around here. So I gotta lengthen that out slightly, and then now I've got a great slot to put that roller. So the first one, I'm just inside the deltoid towards his pec. Much more comfortable. The second position, which you'll be able to tell just based on his face, right onto kind of the insertion of the long head of the bicep into the anterior aspect of the shoulder. This is your people who have labral issues, history of labral tears, concerned about their labrum, long head of the bicep attaches to the anterior aspect of the labrum. Dynamically coming into his bicep here. Doesn't feel great, but it can totally tolerate that. And last but not least, my personal favorite, compression and more compression. There's not the same rule with the elbow. You don't necessarily have to like wrap it the right way. In his case, I want to work on the forearm. So I started above the elbow, but now where I'm pulling my tension is certainly from the elbow down. I just moved to Albuquerque, but before I lived here, I worked with a lot of police officers and firefighters, and we went to the PD and the FD, and we demoed this elbow stuff to those guys. I mean, it's just amazing how quickly you can free up your elbow to get ready to train. Okay, on your stomach, please. Okay. Actually, do you mind going the other way so they can see you now? So put your head on the other end of the table. So his arm is supported, right? So we've got the barbell here. Find that spot, and now go through your finger movements. So we get the flossing of the band due to the compression on the tendons. I get the spot treatment of the pressure through the tool on those nasty trigger points. And as much as he hates this right now, in about 30 seconds, it's gonna feel great. All right, good, you can come on up there. Any comments? Go ahead, just let them know. I mean, it's obviously torturous during, but as soon as that comes off, what's your feel?
Just feel the blood rushing back in. It feels really good.
Why do we foam roll? To get blood in the tissue, right? That's where we show up. Steven's like, get here and do your foam rolling. You're like, oh, I don't need it today. You know what? You freaking need it. Get here and get your foam rolling done, because if you're waiting for the exercise to induce blood flow into that tissue and you have an aberrant motor pattern just sitting there, you're just pumping fluid into those crappy tissues over and over and over again. If your motor pattern is still kind of garbage and you're working on it, at least you have given your joints a fighting chance to get through the requisite range of motion. And if you can't get through the requisite range of motion with what all this stuff we've done, then let's find a new body position for you to perform the movement in, right? If all of this crazy stuff can't get your joints ready to go, then let's have a conversation about loading it in a different way. So that's kind of all I had from a demo perspective. I know it was a little bit random, so I'll try to recap a bit. When you're loading your legs, specifically with squat or other, it's important to make sure you're addressing your quads as far as their ability to let your pelvis move. From there, the adductors or the groin are the next most impactful group of muscles on the position of your pelvis. So if you don't address those two things, you're not really giving, again, your joints a fighting chance to loosen up. We all want to work our glutes, and I do appreciate that they are an impactful structure, but anatomically, they come from the pelvis and wrap onto the head of the femur. They're not going to do what we think they're going to do and reposition the pelvis as much as we want them to. Yes, if I squeeze my butt as hard as I can get into gunslinger mode, but now what am I supposed to do? How can I squat where I'm fully contracted already? I can't eccentrically load into squat. So if I can reposition my rib cage over my pelvis because my quad allows that to happen, I can descend way better and not have to right away bail into hyperextension and just let this dog eat because that's all he can do, essentially. So prepping for squat, we really have to get this upper third of the quad to let go. The adductor has such a massive impact on the pelvis, it's job number 2. Hamstrings, glutes, that's all part of it. You can definitely get into that. As a group, from a self-sufficiency perspective, what I showed you with these kettlebells works great on your quad and adductor. So we can start there. Getting that stuff in your abdominal wall, I have found significant value. I tore my rectus. I have a stupid umbilical hernia from just being idiot in the gym on these shovel deadlifts and overloading the bar. My belly button looks like a disaster right now. It's embarrassing, but I can tell you, I put that sucker on there and it pushes back in. It doesn't stay in there, but you can tell the value, and you've got to get loose through your core. You want to be rigid. You want to protect your back, but it needs to be pliable and mobile as well. So it's good to get in there. Then we talked about what's going on at the shoulder girdle that might prevent clean lifting. Well, we have this levator trigger point, which blends into the upper trap. You can hit that with a lacrosse ball or get some pressure down in. We have lat as it dives underneath the shoulder blade into the front of the shoulder, which creates internal rotation and just allows the rest of this structure to come up. If we can reduce that tension as it relates to tricep and the rotator cuff, we're going to get better setting of the humerus into the scapula to begin with. So those are like just 4 spots plus pec and pec minor that prepare the shoulder girdle for any type of bar stuff that you need to do. If you're an ankle case, like we saw with her, there's multiple ways to do that. Compression with stretching, compression with static tempering, compression with something a little bit more dynamic. So the ankle, I think, is just one you might want to start to think about being a little bit more kind of consistent with. And more for males than females, the burden of the aging male is elbow pain. Unfortunately, you can't do as many pull-ups as you used to do. Curls, the stuff that we like to stay jacked in, becomes kind of problematic in the elbows. So this, especially for the male clientele, is a maintenance thing. It's not necessarily motor prep or movement prep as much as it is we need to address the tension in the wrist flexors and extensors on a consistent basis so that they have enough blood flow and health to do the things they do on a day-to-day grind. So I think if we're talking about maintenance, it's ankles and elbows. If we're talking about movement prep, we're talking about adductors, shoulders, quads, and then, you know, whatever as far as the hamstring or back is concerned, depending on how your back looks. But in my world, I program this in as 5 minutes pre heart rate stuff. So I get in the gym, I spend 5 minutes body tempering, I get my heart rate up on whatever element that I want to get my heart rate up, and then I do dynamic mobility and nervous system preparation, and then I'm lifting. I give myself 10 or 15 minutes. That's all I can afford if you have more. But these are the strategies I have been using to keep myself training, keep my clients training, and what I've noticed in a professional athlete population is just so much quicker than foam rolling, lacrosse ball rubbing, and all that other stuff. So at this point, I know I took a lot of your time on a Corona Saturday, but I'm happy to work on any specific issue you guys have if you'd like to hang out for a little bit longer. Steven, anything else you want me to address?